When most people picture pirates at sea, they think of roaring cannons, fluttering black flags, and barrels of rum. Few consider the unromantic but critical challenge that made all that adventure possible: keeping a crew fed for months on end without the luxury of modern refrigeration. Food was more than just sustenance. It was morale, health, and survival. A ship could be fast, well-armed, and stocked with treasure, but without edible provisions, it was a floating coffin. Pirates had to be inventive, ruthless, and resourceful to keep their larders stocked during long voyages far from land. Why food storage was a matter of life and death, the sea was unforgiving, and hunger didn't respect reputations. A pirate crew out of food faced more than empty stomachs. They risked weakness in battle, mutiny, and deadly diseases like scurvy. Because they operated outside the law, pirates couldn't rely on regular ports for resupply. Their voyages were often unpredictable, and bad weather, lack of prey, or pursuit by naval forces could stretch their time at sea far longer than planned. For these reasons, pirates developed clever strategies for preserving food, ensuring it lasted weeks or even months without spoiling. The pirate pantry, what they stored of pirate ships' food stores, were dictated by practicality, not taste. Most staples were dry, salted, or otherwise preserved. Salted meat, usually beef or pork, heavily salted to prevent rot. It was tough and extremely salty, requiring soaking before eating. Ship's biscuit hardtack simple flour, and water crackers baked hard enough to last for years. They were so solid they could break teeth if not softened in liquid. Dried peas and beans protein, packed and easy to store, though they needed long boiling to be edible. Dried fish cod and other fish salted and sun, dried until nearly unrecognizable. Hard cheeses aged to resist mold, though they could still grow inedible patches over time. These foods were chosen for one reason: they could survive the damp, hot, and pest-ridden environment of a pirate ship. Barrels, the pirate refrigerator barrels, were the heart of pirate food storage. Made of oak and sealed with pitch, they kept out moisture and pests while allowing air to circulate just enough to prevent rot. Each type of food had its own barrel: meat barrels packed with layers of salt, flour barrels lined with cloth to protect from weevils, water barrels stored separately from everything else to avoid contamination. Barrels could be rolled for easy movement, stacked tightly in the hold, and opened only when needed. Their durability made them the perfect storage solution in an era before tin cans or refrigeration. The role of salt wasn't just a seasoning, it was a lifeline. By drawing moisture out of meat and fish, it created an environment where bacteria couldn't survive. Pirates often stole salt from merchant ships or coastal warehouses, as it was as valuable to them as gunpowder. The downside: salted food was so heavily preserved it could be unpleasant to eat. Many pirates soaked it in seawater, then boiled it, trying to remove enough salt to make it palatable. Avoiding spoilage at sea, even preserved food could spoil if handled poorly. Pirates used several tricks to keep their stores edible, rotating which barrels were opened, so none sat half empty for long. Storing food barrels away from direct sunlight and heat from the galley. Keeping food off the floor of the hold to avoid moisture from bilge water. Despite these precautions, spoilage was inevitable, and it was not uncommon to find worms in biscuit or mold on cheese. Pirates often just scraped away the bad parts and ate the rest. Water, the most precious supply food, might keep a crew fed, but water kept them alive. Each man needed roughly a gallon a day for drinking and cooking. Stored in barrels, fresh water could stay drinkable for weeks, sometimes months, if kept sealed and away from heat. When water began to taste stale, pirates mixed it with beer, wine, or rum to mask the flavor. Alcohol also helped preserve it a little longer, though drinking too much on duty was discouraged, at least officially. Foraging at sea storage was only part of the solution. Pirates supplemented their rations whenever possible, fishing fresh catches like tuna or mahi. I added variety and nutrition. Seabirds and eggs captured when passing small islands or rocky outcrops. Rainwater collection, canvas sheets, funneled fresh rain into barrels. These opportunistic meals gave the crew a break from their monotonous diet and helped extend stored provisions. Why pirates couldn't always restock unlike merchant ships. Pirates couldn't just pull into the nearest port to buy fresh supplies. Friendly harbors were rare, and entering a hostel, one risked arrest or worse. When they did resupply, it was often by raiding coastal settlements, attacking other ships, or striking secret deals with corrupt merchants. This meant that a well-stocked ship before departure was crucial. There might not be another chance to fill the hold for months. Storing food at sea for months wasn't just a challenge of preservation. It was a constant war against pests, decay, and sickness. Even the most carefully packed barrels eventually became breeding grounds for creatures that saw a pirate's provisions as their own feast. The unwelcome guests, the pirate pantry, was rarely free of intruders. The most common were weevils, tiny insects that infested flour, biscuit, and grains. Often, pirates would discover that their hardtack crunched in an unsettling way because it was full of wriggling larvae. Cockroaches thrived in warm, damp conditions and could chew through sacks to reach food. They multiplied so quickly that entire holds could become infested within weeks. Rats perhaps the most feared pest, as they devoured food, chewed ropes, and carried diseases like plague and typhus. On many ships, the presence of these pests was so inevitable that crews learned to tolerate them up to a point. Pest control, pirate style. Pirates didn't have modern pest control, but they weren't helpless. Ship cats, the most common defense against rats. Cats were treated as valuable members of the crew. A good ratter could save hundreds of pounds of provisions. Smoking the hold, lighting smoky fires in the hold to drive pests out, though this also risked damaging supplies. Ration rotation, consuming older, already infested barrels first to keep pests from spreading into fresh supplies. Even with these methods, some pests inevitably survived. Pirates sometimes simply accepted that they'd be eating food with extra protein. The dangers of spoiled food, salted meat could turn rancid, biscuit could mold, and even water could sour if barrels leaked or were contaminated. Eating spoiled food carried risks. Food poisoning, stomach pain, vomiting, and diarrhea that could leave men too weak to work. Scurvy caused by lack of vitamin C, leading to bleeding gums, joint pain, and eventually death. Nutritional deficiency, a monotonous diet of dried, salted, or hard foods often weakened the immune system. Without proper nutrition, even a minor illness could sweep through a crew. Creative solutions to bad provisions when faced with foul. Smelling meat or moldy biscuit. Pirates had a few tricks to make them more tolerable. Boiling killed some bacteria and softened tough meat. Soaking in alcohol masked the taste of rot and made it easier to swallow. Scraping or cutting away, removing the worst parts of spoiled food and eating what remained. These weren't foolproof methods, but they kept men alive, at least long enough to reach the next prize or port. The psychology of eating at sea mealtime aboard a pirate ship wasn't a grand event. It was a functional necessity. Crews often ate in shifts, squatting on the deck or in the cramped mess area below. Meals were quick and quiet, except for the occasional grumbling about quality. The mental strain of eating the same bland, tough, or false, melling food every day could sap morale as much as hunger itself. Captains sometimes allowed small luxuries like spices, honey, or fruit when available, knowing that even a small improvement in taste could lift spirits. Trading and bartering for better fare when possible. Pirates traded with passing ships or sympathetic ports for fresher or tastier provisions. Items like sugar, coffee, and tobacco were highly valued, not only for their flavor, but also for their morale. boosting effects. Some crews even risked landing on remote islands to gather coconuts, wild fruit, or fresh fish, though these stops could be dangerous if enemy ships were nearby. Alcohol preservation and pleasure rum, beer, and wine played a dual role aboard pirate ships. Mixed with water, they helped preserve drinkability, and as a stand-alone drink, they were a morale booster after long days at sea. While constant drunkenness was discouraged during active sailing, moderate rations of alcohol were often included in daily provisions. Rum, in particular, became synonymous with pirate culture. Why disease was the greater enemy while spoilage could make life unpleasant. Disease was the true killer. Scurvy was rampant because preserved food lacked fresh produce. Without lemons, limes, or other vitamin in sea sources, symptoms could appear within weeks, crippling a crew's ability to fight or even sail. Some pirates learned to carry small amounts of citrus when possible, but these spoiled quickly in tropical heat. For most, the disease was an unavoidable hazard of life at sea. For pirates, keeping a ship's provisions topped up was an art of improvisation. They rarely enjoyed the safety of a friendly harbor, and docking at a major port risked drawing the attention of the Navy or bounty hunters. Instead, they developed methods to restock food and water without ever walking into a marketplace. The prize ship pantry, the easiest way to restock, was to take provisions directly from captured ships. Merchantmen often carried fresh supplies for long voyages, barrels of salted meat, fresh bread, dried beans, even livestock. When pirates boarded a prize, food and drink were among the first things seized. The best barrels were rolled aboard the pirate ship, while anything spoiled was tossed overboard to make room. Sometimes, the captured ship itself was kept for a few days just to strip every last useful item before being abandoned or sunk. Raiding, coastal stores, small, poorly defended settlements were prime targets for quick raids. Pirates would land under cover of darkness, seize whatever food they could, grain sacks, smoked fish, salted pork, and retreat before defenders could muster. Fishing villages, in particular, were easy pickings. While such raids angered local populations, they kept pirate crews fed without relying on trade. Trading with the shadows, not all resupply came through violence. In regions where officials were corrupt or sympathetic, pirates could arrange secret trades. Local merchants, eager for profit, might sell them supplies at inflated prices in exchange for stolen goods or gold. These deals were risky. Betrayal was always possible, but they allowed pirates to quietly replenish stores without alerting the authorities. Fishing at sea when prey was scarce and supplies ran low, pirates turned to the sea itself. Fishing lines, nets, and harpoons could provide fresh catches, from small fish to larger game like tuna or swordfish. Fresh fish was a welcome change from salted provisions, and the offal was sometimes used to bait lines for even more catches. Some pirates even kept barrels of brine on board to preserve fish caught during the voyage. Hunting on islands when close to uninhabited or lightly populated islands, pirates sometimes landed to hunt wild game, boars, goats, or birds. They also gathered eggs from seabird nests and collected shellfish from rocky shores. Island stops were dangerous because they took time and could expose the ship to discovery. However, the reward of fresh meat and fruit often outweighed the risk. Rainwater harvesting water was always the most urgent need. Pirates carried spare canvas to catch rainwater, stretching it across the deck so runoff poured into barrels. Catching was a communal effort. Every man helped direct the flow, and clean containers were kept ready. In tropical regions, sudden downpours could refill the ship's water supply in a matter of hours. Coconuts and other fresh finds when lucky enough to land in the tropics. Pirates often gathered coconuts. These not only provided drinkable liquid, but also a source of fresh food that kept for weeks. Other finds included bananas, plantains, and citrus fruits, though the latter were a rare prize and often consumed quickly to prevent spoilage. Repairing the larder at sea sometimes, resupply wasn't about adding new provisions but salvaging old ones. Pirates might dry meat in the sun to extend its life, resalt fish that had begun to spoil, or bake ship's biscuit a second time to kill mold and pests. This was tedious work, but in the middle of an ocean crossing, it could mean the difference between survival and starvation. Avoiding naval traps, navies sometimes used bait ports, pretending to offer supplies to lure pirates into range of warships. Experienced captains knew better than to trust an easy resupply, preferring to take the longer, riskier route of stealing or foraging. A single mistake in choosing where to restock could end a pirate's career and life. Even the best stocked pirate ship could run into lean times. A slow season, bad weather, or the sudden loss of captured provisions could turn a comfortable voyage into a fight for survival. When that happened, rationing became a matter of strict discipline and sometimes desperation. The captain's ledger, while pirate crews voted on many matters, the distribution of food was usually under the captain's direct control. He kept a careful account of what was left in the hold, how long it had to last, and how many mouths it had to feed. A skilled captain could stretch provisions far longer than an inexperienced one by balancing daily allowances, avoiding waste, and supplementing with fresh catches when possible. Standard rations under normal circumstances, a pirate's daily ration might include a chunk of salted meat or dried fish, a piece of hardtack or biscuit, a serving of peas, beans, or other dried vegetables, a measure of water or watered beer. These portions were enough to keep a man working, but rarely enough to satisfy him completely. Pirates relied on the excitement of the hunt, the promise of plunder, and occasional feasts after victories to keep morale from sinking. Cutting back when supplies began to run low, rations were reduced, meat portions were halved, biscuit was divided into smaller pieces, water was rationed by the cup instead of the mug. Sometimes a single barrel of food had to serve the crew for weeks, leading to meals that were little more than watery soup or a few bites of bread. Supplementing with fresh catches even during rationing, the crew tried to fish daily. Fresh seafood not only provided extra calories, but also broke the monotony of preserved food. Rainwater collection became a priority, with every man watching the skies for dark clouds. The morale factor hunger could turn even loyal men against their captain. To prevent mutiny, wise captains sometimes kept a hidden reserve, a secret stash of food or alcohol brought out during particularly low points to restore hope. These surprise rations could make the difference between a crew sticking together or turning on their leader. When desperation set in, if all else failed and supplies ran out entirely, pirates faced grim choices. Raiding any ship, even poor or heavily defended vessels, became targets. Risking dangerous ports, entering enemy territory just to buy or steal food. Slaughtering livestock on board goats, chickens, or pigs kept for eggs or milk were killed for meat. In the most extreme cases, historical records tell of ships resorting to eating leather from rigging, boiling sawdust into gruel, or though rare, turning to cannibalism after shipwrecks or prolonged starvation. The feast after famine, when provisions were finally restocked after a long stretch of rationing, the crew often celebrated with an enormous feast. Fresh meat, fruit, and plenty of rum were consumed in a single night, sometimes undoing weeks of careful rationing in one burst of indulgence. Such celebrations boosted morale, but they also reminded pirates of the importance of keeping the larder full. The memory of hunger was a powerful motivator for ensuring the ship never again left port or passed up a prize without enough to eat. While life aboard a pirate ship was harsh and often dangerous, the way pirates ate What they ate, when they ate, and how they shared it, was a reflection of their unique culture. Mealtimes, far from being just functional pauses in the day, became moments of camaraderie, strategy, and sometimes even rebellion against the rigid discipline of naval life. Equality at the table, unlike naval ships, where officers dined separately and enjoyed far better food, pirates shared the same provisions. The captain's biscuit was as hard as the cabin boy's, and his salted pork was just as stringy. This equality helped strengthen the democratic spirit of pirate crews. While the captain might control ration distribution during shortages, he was not exempt from eating the same portions as everyone else. This practice reinforced trust and unity, important qualities in a profession built on risk. Celebrations and feasts after a major victory or a successful raid, pirates often threw caution to the wind with enormous feasts. These gatherings were noisy, chaotic affairs with singing, storytelling, and plenty of rum. Fresh meat from captured livestock, exotic fruit from plundered cargo, and rare luxuries like sugar or coffee might appear on the table. These feasts not only rewarded the crew but also served as a reminder of why they endured long weeks of hard sailing. Cooking at sea, the galley, usually a small brick or iron stove set into a fireproof section of the deck, was the heart of meal preparation. Cooking aboard was simple and usually involved boiling or frying in heavy iron pots. Salted meat was often boiled to soften it, sometimes with peas or beans to make a stew. Ship's biscuit might be crumbled into the pot to thicken the broth. When fish was caught, it was cooked fresh or salted for later use. The cook was an important figure aboard, even if his resources were limited. A good cook could make poor food tolerable, while a bad one could turn a meal into an ordeal. Alcohol and social life, rum, beer, and wine weren't just drinks. They were social glue. Alcohol was often part of the daily ration, served in measured portions to prevent drunkenness during critical operations. In the evenings, sharing a drink helped relieve tension, build camaraderie, and encourage the telling of tall tales. Many pirate legends were likely born during these rum-fueled nights. Food as strategy food was also a strategic resource. A well-fed crew could sail longer and fight harder. Captains who kept their men fed and hydrated won loyalty and reduced the risk of mutiny. Conversely, a captain who mismanaged provisions could quickly find himself replaced or marooned by his own crew. In pirate society, leadership was tied as much to a captain's ability to provide as to his skill in battle. Adapting to circumstances, pirates were nothing if not adaptable. When supplies ran low, they made do with whatever they had, from turning stale biscuit into soup to making sea pies with fish and leftover meat. In tropical waters, they used coconuts, bananas, and wild herbs when available. In colder seas, preserved goods became the backbone of the diet. This flexibility was essential for survival in a profession where certainty was rare. The symbolism of shared food eating together reinforced the idea that every man aboard was part of the same venture. In many ways, the pirate table was a microcosm of their entire way of life: shared risks, shared rewards, and shared hardships. Even in the middle of the vast ocean, over a bowl of stew or a mug of watered rum, pirates could momentarily forget the dangers around them and simply enjoy being part of a brotherhood. Final reflection: keeping a crew fed for months without refrigeration was a constant battle against time, pests, and the elements. Pirates relied on a mix of preservation, opportunistic resupply, strict rationing, and creative cooking to survive. More than just a logistical challenge, food shaped the culture and spirit of pirate life. It fueled their voyages, united their crews, and, in its own way, became as much a part of their legend as the Black Flag itself. Whether gnawing on hardtack under gray skies or feasting on fresh meat after a successful raid, pirates understood one truth: On the open sea, food was freedom, and freedom was worth fighting for.